You've probably eaten the same breakfast more mornings than not. Toast maybe, coffee, cereal, oatmeal. It feels like the least important meal to think about, the one decision you don't have to make. But there's more going on in that repetition than habit, and some of it is worth 20 minutes of your attention. Let's start with the one that surprised me most, because it has nothing to do with what's in the food and everything to do with what happens after you eat it. There's a condition called postprandial hypotension, a drop in blood pressure of 20 points or more that happens within about half an hour to 2 hours after eating. It happens because digestion pulls blood toward your gut, and in an older cardiovascular system, the body doesn't always compensate for that shift fast enough. The reviews on this: Merck Manual, Harvard Health, a look in the American Journal of Medicine, are clear that it's a documented, well-established mechanism, not a fringe theory. And it's not rare. It shows up in as many as 1 in 3 older adults living independently, and up to 2 out of 3 older adults in geriatric care settings. It's a recognized contributor to dizziness, to falls, to fainting, even to small strokes in some cases. Here's the part that connects it to breakfast specifically. The size and the carbohydrate load of the meal make it worse. A big, carb-heavy breakfast, the toast and cereal and juice kind, the easy kind, is exactly the composition most likely to trigger that drop. Smaller meals and meals with less carbohydrate blunt it. Which means the breakfast a lot of people consider the safe, gentle choice for an aging stomach may actually be the one most likely to leave you lightheaded at the table. If you've ever stood up after breakfast and felt the room tilt for a second and chalked it up to just getting older, there's a real chance that had a name and a mechanism the whole time. That matters more for some people than others. If you have Parkinson's, diabetes, heart failure, kidney disease, or you're already diagnosed with postprandial hypotension, clinical guidance specifically flags you as higher risk here. And the right move isn't to redesign your own breakfast overnight. It's to bring this up with your doctor and let them factor in your medications and your particular situation. Now, a different mechanism. This one about why the same breakfast might taste more boring over time. And it's not simply that you've had it too many times. Most explanations for fading taste in older age point at the tongue, as if the taste buds themselves just wear out. The research points somewhere else first: saliva. Taste compounds have to dissolve in saliva before they ever reach a receptor, and saliva flow commonly drops with age and with a long list of medications, blood pressure drugs and antihistamines among them. A controlled study using a savory, umami-rich broth to stimulate saliva flow in people with dry mouth actually measured an improvement in both saliva output and taste recognition afterward. It's a small trial, 35 people, all with a dry mouth condition already, so it's a specific finding, not a universal fix, but it reframes the story. 2 people can eat the identical bowl of oatmeal, and the one with dry mouth is, quite literally, tasting less of it. Same breakfast isn't the same experience for every person eating it. There's a second thread running under that one, and it involves a mineral a lot of people already take without thinking twice: zinc. Zinc reaches your taste buds through a specific saliva protein called gustin. And when zinc levels drop, gustin activity drops with it, and salt taste specifically gets duller. This comes from a large cross-sectional study of over 380 adults aged 55 to 90. So, a breakfast tasting flatter over the years isn't only habituation. It can be a genuine physical supply chain problem between a nutrient and a receptor. Which is where the caution comes in. Because plenty of people respond to fading taste by reaching for a zinc supplement to fix it, and roughly 37% of US adults over 71 already take one, often for exactly that reason, or for immunity. taken above the adult tolerable upper limit, 40 milligrams a day, sustained zinc intake can trigger a copper deficiency, and that copper deficiency has been tied, in case reports, to anemia and to neurological symptoms, including trouble walking. It's an under-recognized risk specifically because it looks like self-care. The honest caveat here, nobody has actually documented this happening from repeated food alone. Every case on record involves supplements, or in some instances, a denture adhesive, not ordinary meals. So this isn't a reason to be afraid of breakfast. It's a reason to be careful with a supplement bottle and to loop in a doctor before taking zinc daily long-term, especially if you're also using a zinc-containing denture adhesive. Now let's talk about what breakfast is actually supposed to be doing for your muscles, because this next part isn't gradual, it's a threshold. Muscle protein synthesis in adults over about 60 doesn't scale up smoothly as you eat more protein. There's a dose it needs to see in one sitting before a specific pathway, mTORC1, the one that triggers muscle building, fully switches on. That dose works out to roughly 25 to 30 grams of quality protein, delivering close to 2.8 to 3 grams of leucine. Below that line, in one meal, the anabolic response stays muted, more or less regardless of how much food is on the plate otherwise. This comes from a systematic review of what's called the leucine trigger hypothesis, backed by a broader review of protein timing and body composition. And breakfast, for most people, is consistently the lowest protein meal of the entire day. So, if your breakfast has been the same for years and it sits under that protein threshold, it isn't a small daily shortfall. It's the same missed opportunity at the same meal, repeated for years. A chance for your body to hold on to muscle that simply doesn't get taken morning after morning. That's worth knowing. Not as an alarm, but as a genuinely actionable fact. Getting closer to that 25 to 30 gram mark at breakfast specifically, not just somewhere in the day, is what the research says actually flips the switch. If you have chronic kidney disease, this is one place to be careful rather than to just add protein on your own. Higher protein loads can put more strain on kidneys that are already impaired. So that's a conversation for a nephrologist or a renal dietitian, not a solo decision. Now, the last piece, and it's the one that reframes everything before it. For a real share of older adults, a repeated breakfast isn't a mindset. It isn't comfort, and it isn't laziness. It's what's left after help that was supposed to arrive didn't. There's a federal program built around exactly this problem. Under the Older Americans Act, states providing home-delivered or congregate meals to adults 60 and older are required to make sure each meal covers at least a third of the recommended dietary allowances, which, in practice, forces rotation. It's a program designed, on paper, to prevent the very repetition this video is about. But research from Brown University's School of Public Health, published in late 2025, found that roughly 86% of low-income, food-insecure older adults who could benefit from that program currently have no access to it. And the same research found that if funding for the program had simply kept pace with inflation since 2001, federal funding in 2024 would have been something like $620 million higher than it actually was. Put plainly, the safety net that was supposed to solve this has been shrinking in real terms for a generation, and most of the people it's meant for aren't reached by it at all. So, when someone describes deciding at the grocery store, not based on taste or nutrition, but on which 2 or 3 items the week's budget can actually stretch to cover, with the same shelf-stable staples returning out of necessity, not habit. That's not a story about routine. That's a structural story, and it deserves to be told as one. Here's something worth sitting with honestly. Taken all together, None of this means your same breakfast is dangerous or that you need to overhaul it tomorrow. Postprandial hypotension is real and under-discussed, but severity varies enormously person to person, and most cases go undiagnosed rather than becoming an emergency. The taste research is genuinely promising, but the strongest trial behind it involved just 35 people. And the protein threshold is one factor in muscle health among several, not the entire story. What ties these together isn't a single verdict. It's that the same breakfast is doing several different measurable things to your body that rarely get discussed in the same conversation. If any of this sounds familiar, the lightheadedness after eating, food tasting flatter than it used to, or breakfast being the meal you never think to add protein to, that's worth raising with your own doctor who knows your medications, your labs, and your history in a way no video can. This is general education, not a diagnosis or a treatment plan. And decisions about your own meals, supplements, or medical conditions belong with you and your physician.